Though Christ on earth is able to work on behalf of God Himself, He does not come with the intention of showing all men His image in the flesh. He does not come for all men to see Him. He comes to allow man to be led by His hand, thereby entering into the new age. The function of Christ's flesh is for the work of God Himself, that is, for the work of God in the flesh, and not to enable man to fully understand the substance of his flesh. No matter how he works, it does not exceed that which is attainable to the flesh. No matter how he works, he does so in the flesh with a normal humanity, and does not fully reveal to man the true countenance of God. Additionally, His work in the flesh is never as supernatural or inestimable as man conceives. Even though Christ represents God Himself in the flesh, and carries out in person the work that God Himself ought to do, He does not deny the existence of God in heaven, nor does He feverishly proclaim His own deeds. Rather, He humbly remains hidden within His flesh. Apart from Christ, those who falsely claim to be Christ do not have His qualities. When juxtaposed against the arrogant and self-exalting disposition of those false Christs, it becomes apparent what manner of flesh is truly Christ. The more false they are, the more such false Christs show off themselves, and the more capable they are of working signs and wonders to deceive man. False Christs do not have the qualities of God. Christ is not tainted by any element belonging to false Christs. God becomes flesh only to complete the work of the flesh, not simply to allow all men to see Him. Rather, He lets His work affirm His identity, and allows what He reveals to attest to His substance. His substance is not baseless. His identity was not seized by His hand. It is determined by His work and His substance. Though He has the substance of God Himself, and is capable of doing the work of God Himself, He is still, after all, flesh unlike the Spirit. He is not God with the qualities of the Spirit. He is God with the shell of flesh. Therefore, no matter how normal and how weak He is, and howsoever He seeks the will of God the Father, His divinity is undeniable. In the incarnate God exists not only a normal humanity and its weaknesses. There exists even more the wonderfulness and unfathomableness of His divinity, as well as all His deeds in the flesh. Therefore, both humanity and divinity actually and practically exist within Christ. This is not in the least empty or supernatural. He comes to earth with the primary objective of carrying out work. It is imperative to be possessed of a normal humanity to carry out work on earth. Otherwise, however great the power of His divinity, its original function cannot be put to good use. Though His humanity is of great importance, it is not His substance. His substance is the divinity. Therefore, the moment He begins to perform His ministry on earth is the moment He begins to express the being of His divinity. His humanity is solely to sustain the normal life of His flesh, so that His divinity can carry out work as normal in the flesh. It is the divinity that directs his work entirely. When he completes his work, he will have fulfilled his ministry. What man ought to know is the entirety of his work, and it is through his work that he enables man to know him. Over the course of his work, he quite fully expresses the being of his divinity, which is not a disposition tainted by humanity, or a being tainted by thought and human behavior. When the time comes when all his ministry has come to an end, he will have already perfectly and fully expressed the disposition that he ought to express. His work is not instructed by any man. The expression of his disposition is also quite free, is not controlled by the mind or processed by thought, but is revealed naturally. This cannot be achieved by any man. Even if the surroundings are harsh or the conditions do not permit, he is able to express his disposition at the appropriate time. One who is Christ expresses the being of Christ, while those who are not do not have the disposition of Christ. Therefore, even if all resist him or have notions of him, none can deny on the basis of man's notions that the disposition expressed by Christ is that of God. All those who pursue Christ with a true heart or seek God with intent will admit that he is Christ based on the expression of his divinity. They would never deny Christ on the basis of any aspect of him that does not conform to man's notions. Though man is very foolish, all know exactly what is the will of man and what originates from God. It is merely that many people intentionally resist Christ due to their own intents. If not for this, not a single man would have reason to deny the existence of Christ. For the divinity expressed by Christ does indeed exist, and his work can be witnessed by the naked eye of all.